Hi everyone, welcome all to the Get Finance Fit series. Before we start, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. The University of Queensland, UQ, acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So hi everyone, my name's Tara and I'm a member of the UQ Young Alumni Advisory Board, in particular in the Professionals portfolio. Tonight we'll be hosting the Get Finance Fit series on financial planning for 2022. So thank you very much everyone for joining us tonight. On the topic of UQ Young Alumni Advisory Board, we also have another event coming up this year, and that is the UQ Young Alumni Party with a Purpose. This is an event in support of children's mental health research and will be held on Friday, the 12th of November from 7 to 11 p.m. at the warehouse. There's tickets still available that you can purchase via this QR code, or you can also go onto our Facebook site or also the UQ Young Alumni website as well. As it says there, the remaining tickets are $110 each for a general ticket. So I look forward to seeing you all there. So tonight, I'm very excited to announce that we have two panelists, Effie Zahos and Andrew Courtney. I think most of you will have met them before, as they've been running the previous Get Finance Fit sessions for the year. So Effie is editor-at-large of Canstar. She's a Today Show's finance expert and former editor of Money Magazine and UQ alumnus. So we're very excited to have Effie on board tonight. And we also have Andrew Courtney as a panelist. So he's the director of Plenitude Wealth and Plenitude Lend, and also a UQ alumnus. So I welcome both Effie and Andrew to introduce themselves.
Hello, glad to be here.
Hello, hello. It's great to be here.
Okay, so next steps. Shall I start sharing my screen, Tara? We're good to go?
Sounds great. Take it away.
Fantastic. All right. So hopefully I don't mess this thing up and we can get our tech going. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Yes? Okay, awesome. So today, the typical disclaimer, this is all general information only. Please do not take this as personal advice. I do not want ASIC knocking on my door tomorrow, so make sure you take this as general information only. So start with the end in mind. So since we're talking about planning for 2022, what I always talk to people about is starting with the end in mind. And one of the three key things that most people use as excuses to not live the life that they want to live are basically associated with time, not enough time, or not healthy enough, or not wealthy enough, right? So what I always share with people is you need to find your North Star. So what does that mean? Right? If you look at this Venn diagram right here, so the middle part here allows you to make future decisions a hell of a lot easier, right? So by understanding and setting short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals within the context of time, health, and wealth, what happens is all future decisions becomes a hell of a lot easier, right? If you and your partner or your household can talk about what is it that you're trying to achieve next year, in 5 years' time, or whatever kind of timeline you want to achieve in, what happens is it becomes a little bit clearer and the future decisions that you need to make becomes much easier. Yeah? Go. Next slide. So starting with the end in mind within the finance context looks like this, right? There are two key variables that you need to consider, right? There's the income variable and then there's the capital variable, right? So right now we are trading our time for an income, right? And ideally from that income, you should be getting a surplus, right? So post expenses, your surplus becomes your capital, right? Now it's up to you on how you want to grow this capital. So Effie and I talked about investing in a webinar or two ago, right? Saving your taxes is a way to build capital as well, right? And building your surplus is a really, really fast way of building your capital, because ultimately how you invest your capital will determine how much income you can get at the back end of your investment career, right? So that's the game. So right now we are trading our time, right, for an income. And then from that income, we're building up our capital base. And then ideally, we pull a lever sometime in the near future, ideally near rather than later on in the piece, right? Where we pull out some income from our investment portfolio to supplement our own existing income, right? Ideally, supplement some, all, or more of your current income is how I typically structure this thing, right? So if you look at this from a perspective of setting yourself a goal, a stretch goal, and a big, hairy, audacious goal, one that is designed to make you think, is this actually realistic, right? Every single person's different. So what I suggest you do is have a think about, well, what kind of passive income would you like in your life? Passive being something that you do not have to work for, right? And this is why building a capital base is crucial, because they're both interlinked, right? So for example, for a household, and the initial aim is to replace $100,000 worth of passive income. So what you do is you write that down, right? And then I say, well, what's the stretch goal going to be, right? Every single person's different. So you're going to ask yourself, well, what kind of goals do you want to set yourself, right? So the stretch goal, you can ask yourself, well, do I want to add $20,000 to that? Do I want to add 50 or maybe $100,000, right? Depending on how ambitious you want to be. Right? So let's say you add $50,000, right? So your strive goal is now 150, your stretch goal. Then the next one is your big, hairy, audacious goal, one that will sort of set you financially free forever, basically, right? And what you can do is add $50,000 to $100,000, depending on how ambitious you want to get to, right? So for this particular case, let's say you add another $100,000. The next port of call is you multiply that out by 20, right? Why? It's because multiplied by 20 gives you, on a 5% return on investment, allows your capital to work for you and produce an income at a 5% return, right? So if you multiply that out by 20, then now the goal is to reach $2 million of capital, right? 3 mil and 5 mil, right? So now you know what point B looks like, right? Point B, part 1, your goal. Part 2, your stretch goal. Part 3 is your big, hairy, audacious goal. Your arrive, strive, thrive numbers, right? Then the next question is, what's your current net asset position? Yeah, your point A, right? Net asset is basically what you own minus what you owe, right? So you know where you are and know where you want to go financially. And then you can start working towards implementing some of the tactics that Effie and I have shared with you over the past year to ensure that you can speed up the process of replacing some, all, or more of your income. And that's the financial game that we're on, right? The next thing that we want to do is we want to set some lifestyle and financial goals, because ultimately you can't be setting yourself too many financial goals, because unfortunately you won't be enjoying yourself that much, right? So what you want to do is you want to balance it out. You want to get your lifestyle goals in place. You want to get your financial goals in place, right? To just ensure that you've got something sustainable going for yourself and your household, right? So what is it that you want to do? You want a local holiday, right? Just write it all in. So if you can draw out this particular table, you can do local holiday, overseas holiday, right? If you really want to kind of set a great goal for yourself, potentially a holiday house would be nice. A lot of people are going for that, right? Potentially, what else could it be? A new car, travel to Europe every few years, or if you've got children, private school, primary, private high school, university, pay for the university education. It's up to you, right? Everything is up for grabs, really. It's up to you on where you set your goals and where you set your targets. And ideally, with your financial goals, what you need in an ideal world is a buffer as an initial goal. In an ideal world, you want one month worth of expenses. Then from that, you build up to 3, and then up to 7, and then up to 1 year. And then, hey, presto, you can keep investing. You can start investing a hell of a lot more because you've got that safety net,
I
right?
was about to add to that, Andrew, that buffer is really important from my point of view. Is basically, I have seen a lot of people become unstuck without that buffer over the last 12 months. It's a lot harder to get together than, I mean, it's easy to say, get 1 month's worth of buffer together and income, plus everything else that's going on in our lives. But that's definitely one thing I have seen really unstuck a lot of people in the last 12 or so months.
Yeah, 100%. And that's crucial, right? Before you start investing,
Yeah.
you really want to get your buffer in order, because, investing is a risky venture, especially if you invest in certain kind of asset classes that's very, very volatile in nature. It goes up and down in value, right? So what you want to do is you want to start setting yourself some targets, right? Build a buffer, maybe put $50 per week towards your buffer, right? You can start dollar cost averaging into one of the platforms that we were sharing before, Raise or Spaceship, or one of those micro investing platforms, right? Where you can put away another, let's say $25 per week. Or if you're earning more and if your surplus is bigger, well, you can ramp that up to $500 per week, depending on where you're at, right? Every single person's different, right? So what you do is you start lining up all of these particular goals, and then in an ideal world, you want to automate it. And you want to review it every quarter, every 6 months, or every year, right? That's the game that we want to play. You want to set yourself some lifestyle goals to keep you going, because there are sacrificial, financial goals are typically sacrificing today for tomorrow, you see? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're ticking off your lifestyle goals so that you're in the sustainable mode, right? Because if you're doing one or the other, more than one or the other, what happens is, if you're doing too much finance, right, your lifestyle suffers, right? And if you're doing too much lifestyle, what happens is your financials really, really suffer, and you don't build the massive momentum that we're aiming for, which is the compounding effect that will help you achieve your ideal income, right? So our goals as a household, right? So Sophie and I did this back in 2016, right? So our initial goal is $250,000 worth of passive income. Our stretch goal is $350,000. And our big, hairy, audacious goal, our Thrive number, is $450,000. How did we come about these particular numbers? What we did was we had a dinner one time over a glass of wine. We wrote down all of the things that we wanted in life, right? All of the wants that we wanted. Like, one of the examples is we wanted a chef to come and visit our house 3 times a week to cook us a lovely meal, right? So we wanted that. So how much is that going to cost? Well, probably about $600 per week, right? So we needed to cater for that. To add all of these kind of luxuries that you want that you don't necessarily need as well, right? And hey, presto, you got a fairly sizable number.
I was about to say, Andrew, I think I'm going to move in with you in retirement. If that's one of your goals, I'll
come on in, there'll be plenty of room. Because as you can see in my lifestyle goal, right? One of our lifestyle goals, and we do this every single year, right? Sophie and I did this at the start of this year. One of our main aims is to get a house with an ocean view, office, pool and sauna for myself, veggie patch and greenhouse for Sophie, guest house for the family, and ideally a large lawn in between our house and the guest house, right? Because obviously we need some space, right? So this is one of our goals, right? Work 3.5 days per week, private schooling for the kids, 8 weeks off per year, travel overseas, travel local, right? And increasing time for our passions, right? So these are the kinds of goals. There is no right or wrong answer with this, guys, right? And if you can do this every single year, what happens is you start to kind of become a little bit more creative about what you want to achieve. And then what you do is you create a bit of a timeline for yourself, and you work out, well, how are we going to make this happen? Right? Because without writing it down, it's in the ether. You're never going to be able to achieve it as quick as you would if you were to write it down, right? Financial growth, grow the team, grow the business, complete my property developments, replicate investment portfolio in the SMSF, right? Passive income, never stress again, invest in more coaches for myself, right? Because I need to hold myself accountable too. See what I'm saying? So ultimately, you got to ask yourself, well, what kind of goals do you want in your life to achieve the numbers that you're aiming for, and to achieve the time and health goals that you want for yourself as well? Back to the North Star, you see? So Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. Some of you may have read Robert Kiyosaki's work, right? One of his books is called the cash flow quadrant, right? So what does this stand for? E is employee, S is specialist or self-employed, B is business, and I is investments, right? So what you want to be, what you want to do is have 2 feet or 1 foot in each quadrant, ideally, or in one of these quadrants, I should say. Ideally, you want 2 parts of the quadrant, because if you're focusing on being an employee alone for the rest of your life, what typically happens is A, you might have a stash of cash that's probably depreciating in value over time, right? Or B, you're living week to week, right? And that's the last thing you want to do. So ultimately, you want a surplus and you want to start investing. The easiest thing to do is to be an employee and be an investor, right? If your goal is to be a multimillionaire in 10 years, well, guess what? You got to be a specialist or a business owner, right? Because it's going to be very, very difficult to dollar cost average your way into becoming a multimillionaire over a 5-10 year period. Now, if you're willing to work your butt off, right, it's possible for a business, but certainly not guaranteed. This is the question that every single person has to ask themselves, right? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be an employee? Do you want to be a specialist or a small business owner, right? Do you want to create a big business for yourself, right? Or do you want to be an investor, right? Ideally, pick 2 out of the quadrants and work towards adding value. So as an employee, in an ideal world, you want to work towards adding value and building your skills up so that you can become more valuable in the marketplace, in the workplace, right? So back to the financial side of things, what you want to do is play the doubling game well. So what's the doubling game? Right, ultimately, if you start off with $1,000, if you double it 10 times, you get to, believe it or not, $1 million. So 10 doubles gets you to $1 million. If you can get another 10 doubles from 1 million, guess what? You get to $1 billion, right? So really, all you really need is you go back to your goals is maybe 12 doubles, 13 doubling cycles in your lifetime. So you got to ask yourself what your net asset position is at the moment. Is it 128,000? Is it 64? Is it 256? Or is it $1 million? And then what's your goal? Is it 8 mil? Is it 16 mil? 4? Every single person's different, right? And then ask yourself, how many doubling cycles do you need to achieve within the timeline that you choose, right? And then start working out, well, reverse engineer that ideal outcome, and off you go. You're on the way, right? You know where point A is, right? You know where point B is. Start with end in mind and work towards achieving those goals. Yeah, cool. So what are the 3 core things you need to do? You need to save more, reduce taxes, and invest better. And the key aspect, if there's one thing that I'd love for you to take away from this particular webinar tonight, is ask yourself, how can you beat your previous self? Please do not compare yourself to others, right? Because you may fall for the trap of comparing yourself to someone's chapter 20, right? Your chapter 1 is not equivalent to someone else's chapter 20. So please don't be hard on yourself, right? Every single person is on a different journey. So you got to ask yourself, have I saved enough this year? What did I save this year? How much taxes did I reduce this year? And how much did I pocket, more importantly? Because far too many people get that tax return and buy them nice Jimmy Choo shoes, right? Or go out and get themselves a loan, or go out with the boys and enjoy themselves on a night out, right? Have you invested better? What kind of return on investment did you get for your net asset position this year, right? Are you getting better as an investor, right? Is your financial literacy increasing, right? I would suggest that all of you here who have come to these webinars have increased your financial literacy. Then the next question is, what are you going to do next year? How are you going to level up again, right? What you need to do is take the tactics that Effie is just about to share with us, right? And make sure you grab the bull by its horns and take action. That's the next step, guys. You're getting theory, a bunch of theory from us. And what you need to do is start taking practice, start taking action towards your goals. Yeah, cool. So ultimately, as an investor, you need to choose where you put your dollars, right? So cost of capital is debt, right? So you got to ask yourself, what kind of interest rates are you currently paying with the debt that you have in your life, right? In an ideal world, you only really want one kind of debt, which is good debt, right? Good debt is debt associated with an asset that is appreciating in value or producing an income for you, right? So the question is, where are you putting your surplus dollars? Because if you're putting towards your good debt, that's saving you 2% per annum, you're literally getting 2% return on investment, right? Now, if your risk-free return is getting you 0.01%, i.e. a cash account, like an access account, guess what? You don't necessarily want to be doing that because you could be going backwards, right? Now, then the question is, well, what kind of return on investment can you get for your surplus income, right? What kind of strategies do you have available in your toolbox, right, to get you a higher return on investment than 2%? Because if you can't invest it better, guess what? You're better off paying down your debt, aren't you? So that's pretty much how you can manage your investment, right? Think about what kind of tools do you have? What kind of assets can you invest in? And if you don't know, if you don't have any options, well, guess what? It's time to read. It's time to listen a little bit more, right? It's time to write down some action steps. Next one. So invest better. So these are the kinds of assets that you can invest in as an investor. So let's zoom in a little bit here. So notice there's return. As the return increases, typically the risk increases as well, right? So cash is the lowest return and the lowest risk. The next one is fixed income, which is basically debt, getting into government debt, corporate debt, that kind of stuff, right? Next one is property, shares, right? Crypto, NFTs. I don't know if some of you have heard of NFTs, right? Building your own business, high return, high risk, right? And to top it all off, if you add debt to it, what happens is, this is the riskiest play. If you're not careful, it's the best way to amplify returns and the best way to amplify losses as well. So it's a double-edged sword. So you've got to ask yourself, what kind of portfolio do you want to build for yourself to achieve the ideal endpoint that we talked about a little bit earlier, right? What kind of the capital numbers that you wrote down? Yeah, cool. So Taylor for Aussies, the question is, which one do you want to be? The one that's surviving, right? That will never hit their ideal income because they're living week to week, right? Next one is arriving. They're saving well, right? They will get to their ideal income, but the problem is it'll take them quite some time, but they'll get there, right? It might take them 40, 50 years, but they'll get there, right? The next one is the one that pays for their home and starts investing a little bit, right? It speeds up the process and saves them time. Might save them 5, 10 years time, right? So you have to ask yourself, is it worthwhile, right? Or number 4, the thriving one, which is racing towards their ideal income, back to the numbers that we were talking about before, right? Where they're utilizing a bunch of tactics and strategies, they're gamifying the game of finance, they're always asking themselves, how do I make this thing better, right? So that they can get better on a year-to-year basis, so that they can speed up their ability to replace their ideal income. So that's pretty much it. So quick summary, save more, reduce taxes, and invest better. Thanks very much. That's me. Effie, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you. That's a really good snapshot of your top level perspective of what it takes to get where you want to go. And I really did love that graphic as to your investment options, because when you break it down like that, you do realize it's, there's not that much out there, and let's not overcomplicate things. The interesting thing when you showed our bios up there, Nina and Tara, I thought 90s, gee, that was a long time. I tell you what, I probably did my best budgeting when I was at uni as an undergrad, because I'm not the wisest budgeting, but I grew up on the Gold Coast, and I used to drive up every Sunday to Brisbane. And my parents gave me $100. That was my allowance for the week. And I had a little part-time job on the Saturday. And so that $100 was what, drive up on Sunday, came back, that about $16 if I put it over 6 days. Now, a smart person would realize, well, that's not a lot of money. You got to spread it out. But of course, the accommodation was paid for. Parents, Greek migrants, of course, they packed my car up with all the food. So I didn't have a lot of expenses as such. But you know what I did? I blew it all on the Sunday night, most of it. I think I ended up, I was very smart at budgeting, but only to the sense that I would blow $80. And it would be at either the rec club if I was at uni, or the underground. I don't think if it's still there anymore. That just shows my age. And I tell you what, I had to budget on whatever I could get as coupons or discounts or freebies, or even trying to get petrol to get back down to the Gold Coast. And I'm not sure how many of you can relate to that, but that was my first kind of foray into the world of budgeting. I can tell you, I'm so much more refined now. I'm the type of person that will pays extra into their super, that has it there with their bills, pays themselves first, invest, put 2 kids through private schools, all on a journalist's wage. So how does one come from blowing their $100 on a night out to where I am now? And it's just knowledge. So look, I definitely share the same disclaimer as Andrew. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not advice. I'm merely sharing the knowledge that I've gained over, say, 25 odd years. So let's hope my IT skills is as good as about what I'm about to say to you. So I guess, there you go. How's that looking?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So for me, if I'm going to take it down to a level of how do you budget and what should we be doing moving into 2022? Because as I said before, the pandemic has played havoc on our lives. So whether you feel that it had, you may have actually been very successful in the last, 18 months, because there were people that managed to really turn their situation around. For most people, it was a case of reassessing everything. So for me, the number one thing that I'll be doing is review your spending that you did last year. And the simplest way to do that is go online, print out your statement, and highlight anything that is either reoccurring, is an ad hoc. You'll be surprised to see what your digital footprint reveals about you. That's probably the most interesting thing to take note. Sorry, I've just noticed, of all times, I'm almost running out of batteries, which is very unusual. And I've just jumped a few slides. Next up, I agree with definitely Andrew, what he was talking about. Set up your cash cushion. And I don't care how much is in there at this stage. Yes, most financial advisors or money experts say you need 3 to 6 months. So long as you've got something in there, that's all I care about. And it could be as little as $1,000. You've really got to have that in there, because life does throw curveballs. And I see so many situations where you have the best intentions, but then, I don't know, your car goes, your fridge goes. Then you feel bad because you've got nothing, you take it out, or you buy now, pay later, whatever the case may be. So set up that cash cushion. The other one is, I'd like you to download one app, one money app. It's either going to help you make money or save money next year. And that could be, I noticed Andrew said Raise. That's an app. That's a roundup account. It's not bad. Watch the fees with any of those micro investing apps. That's the only thing I can say to you. My daughter did start investing in that. She's now kind of outgrown it, and she now invests directly through ETFs. But that's a great example of downloading at least one app. Another one I use as well is Fuel Buddy. I use that to save on petrol. Half Price or Frugal are great shopping apps. That's what I'm talking about. Download one of those apps to make you be a little better with what you've got. If you haven't started investing, I suggest next year do it. Never try and time the market. It's not about that. It's time in the market rather than timing it. And I know there was a hell of a lot of first-time investors that went into the market this year, last year, because of the pandemic. And I think it's great that people are dabbling their toes in there or going that way, because as Andrew pointed out, money in the bank is going backwards. You throw inflation, the headline rate there was sitting like to 2.1%. You got money in the bank, as Andrew pointed, you're lucky to get 0.01. Your money's going backwards. You do need cash, don't get me wrong. That's why we've got a cash cushion, but you've got to look at other areas. And of course, as you dial up the risk, you do dial up the return, but the two work together. The other thing, I'm a big advocate of super. You may just be in uni now, you may have just finished, you may have just got your first job. I really suggest you look at least at where your money is. If you're not going to salary sacrifice for whatever reason, it could be because you still want to achieve some of these other goals. The very least is, where is my money invested? How is it performing? And if you can salary sacrifice up to the contribution limits, then go for it for the tax perks. So they're basically the top 5 things I would be looking at now to prepare yourself for next year. They're very simple things. I mean, for me, It's always been about something simple, something achievable. And what I do personally is I actually give myself 2 financial goals each year. Really simple. I mark it on. I still have like a kind of a paper goal calendar little book that I carry around. I put my ideas in and so on. It's a Post-it note. It's stuck on there. So for this year, my 2 simple goals were really amp up my contributions into my super. So in addition to salary sacrificing, also I'm making non-concessional contributions. And I do it as a BPay. So when I get paid each fortnightly, I transfer the money. I know what I'm looking at depending on my other commitments. Every fortnight money must go in for me. I'm not suggesting you do that. It's my age group that I feel that this is the best investment for me now. And even when the markets took that ridiculous turn, you bet your bottom dollar you know what I was doing. I was pumping in my super fund. So that was my first goal. The other goal was something really simple, trivial. I just decided to do the 52-week challenge. Yeah, it's a simple little thing. It's going to give me about 1,300 at Christmas time. That's the kids' presents. That's why I did that. Simply to know they're done, it's done. I don't want to have worry about it. And I keep them simple and I write the goals down exactly like Andrew was saying, and it's stuck on my diary there. So that's not going to, sorry, I'm showing you all my personal stuff. I think it's really important here that when it comes to money, I just want to go through this quickly. How well do you know yourself? And I actually worked a little bit on this in my book. Your money personality is important. And I don't know if you can see any of those animals there. This is something that's come out of my book. I also work with the behavioral economists on there. And you can probably maybe relate to some of these animals and see yourself in there. It's important to understand that when it comes to budgeting, it's almost more important to understand why you do what you do than it is about how much you earn, because it's not about what you earn that counts, it's what you spend. And why you spend comes down to who you are. And I say that because your money personality does kind of dictate quite a bit about what you're willing to take on, what you're not, and so on. So it's important that you understand who you are. Okay. The next one is understand that there are a lot of marketing games out there in the world, and they're all trying to grab your hard-earned cash. And as I say here, you can justify just about any purchasing decision. Believe me, I have been through that. I think in my 20s, I said to someone today, you would just open my cupboard and you will see my wardrobe, the carnage of what took place in my 20s and 30s. So it's important to understand some of these mind games. And I think the one I just want to focus on here is that paying installment one. Have a look at that. What does that remind you of? Probably something like buy now, pay later. Mm-hmm. It's not new. The idea of buy now, pay later is not new, guys. Very clever what they've done, the whole industry. But the idea of putting payments in installments has been around for a long, long time. And you can see here, people are anchored on the lower price. $399. Oh my goodness, I can't afford that. What? $99? Yeah, I'm sold. I'm in. Paying up front is another clever one. That's Uber. Think of Uber there. So do take care of these marketing mind games, because as Andrew is saying, you could be saving your butt off. But if you are susceptible to some of these, it really does destroy all your hard work. And I want to show you something here. This is a story I did. It was a newsletter that I have. I wanted to understand that, okay, buy now, pay later is probably, on paper, cheaper than credit cards, of course. Of course it is. There's no fees if you meet your conditions. But if you're late, there are fees. And the smaller your purchase here is, the bigger the impact these fees are. So let's say I wanted to buy a jacket for $150. Let's say I just happened to use Afterpay. And if I don't adhere to their conditions, I have one payment late, it's $10. So the total cost here is that $10 plus the $150, $160 back. The cost as a percentage of the purchase in value for one late payment is 6.67%. So this is where you just got to take care. And let's not even start talking about the behavioral games that buy now, pay later does. Buy now, pay later could tend to make you spend more. If you're spending more, you're not investing. And, you know, it's so much easier to go shopping on a buy now, pay later than you would if you had to use your own money. You'd probably think twice. The other marketing games here I wanted to show you is, have you ever come across things like this? I know it gets me. This is on a website. This uses all the marketing mind games. There's 1, 2, 3 here. So this is based on bestseller, 52% off, one only. These are all kind of fear-based marketing. My goodness, when I was researching this, I almost jumped in and bought it myself. So you've really got to take care, and you understand that there are a whole lot of marketing games out there. This one-click ordering, it makes things easy for you. You put in your details, your debit card, they save it there. But you've got to remember, next time you go in and shop and you just put items in your basket, you're only a click away from actually buying this, as opposed to having to put your debit card details in there as well. So free gifts and cashbacks. How many times have you gone out trying to buy something and they say, look, buy this? Makeup companies do this really well. Buy this and you get your free lipstick. Oh, yeah, what a bargain. Were you going to buy it in the first place? Well, it's just not makeup companies that do it as well. Actually, financial products are very good at this as well. You've heard of cashback home loans. So this I did a little while ago on the 23rd of the 9th. The deals do differ quite considerably as things go on. So back then, the top one, and I think this is still the top one, $4,000 if you refinance your home loan to them. The rate isn't bad actually at 1.99, but it's important to have a look at the comparison rate with any type of product. So your comparison rate is what's known as the true rate. You've got your advertised rate, and then you've got your comparison rate, which takes into account ongoing fees. So I think it's important with any product that comes with a free, perk, whether that be a free lipstick or $4,000, you need to compare these products to, can I get a cheaper home loan? Am I paying for this $4,000 in the long run? And it's interesting, I did some sums to compare, with the cashback versus with the non-cashback. And you can see you're actually better off in this case with the cheaper loan than getting that cashback amount. So it's important that you do your sums, and if you're not quite sure, get expert advice on that. One thing I do see quite often is people get into this payday circle of life. I mean, we've all got great intentions of getting to our goals, but like I said, life does throw you curveballs, gets in the way. And a lot of people just say, I just can't get there because I'm constantly trying to, meet my commitments. And a lot of people fall into this life cycle here whereby you get paid, you feel loaded. Yes, this is great. You feel like, normally, I don't know why we get paid normally on a Thursday or a Friday, but most of us do. And we seem to think, yes, drinks at the pub or my shout, going out to dinner because you're feeling rich. Then you've realized you've got your bills have got to come out. You're not so loaded anymore, but you want this item. And then you might buy now, pay later. You're worried, you're waiting. When's payday? I'm hanging out, and the cycle starts again. If you do find yourself into that situation, it needs to go back to why is it what you do? And that's where that maybe printing out your digital statement, highlighting things and saying, am I doing a lot of discretionary spending here? Am I under control? And if you're in a very dire straight situation, what I call a bare bones budget is what you need to do. Include your essentials, get rid of all the non-essentials. I'm talking serious here, get rid of them. And I'll talk a little bit about these kind of non-essentials in a minute. Then when you save the money that you no longer have now with non-essentials, live on this for 3 months to build that buffer, because it's that buffer that's going to help you stop dipping into instant credit to help you get through these curveballs. Okay. And I know Andrew spoke a bit about your investing. I think when it comes to investing, I did say one thing you want to do is start doing it if you haven't done it. And you don't have to be smart about it in the sense of, what I'm afraid to jump in because, I'm worried about market falling and so on. That would probably happen, and it may well happen, because as Andrew was saying, as you dial up the return, you dial up the risk. For me, it's all about saving little, saving often. And this little graph does it so well. It shows that, you know, if you saved $100 each week, this is your trajectory of what's happening. And you'll notice when you get past this 10-year mark, that's where your money really starts working for you. It's working for you. The compound interest on that is actually doing most of the heavy lifting now. It's not your $100 doing the heavy lifting. And there are so many great calculators out there that can really inspire you about what would $50 do? What would $25 do? So really worthwhile going on to that. Another great one, and this is on InvestSmart's one. And just for full disclosure, I do sit on the board of directors for InvestSmart as an independent director. I do like this calculator. The reason I like it is because it takes inflation into consideration. So it makes me think, okay, I do want to save for a home deposit. Let's say that's what you're thinking. What does it take to get there? Because, you know, obviously, you know, if I want to save $100,000 by 2031, $100,000 now is not going to be $100,000 the same in that period because of inflation. So that would be the equivalent of $128,000. So what you need to do then to get that target, you need to save $700 per month to reach your target. And you reach it just a little bit early there by doing that. So again, I find these calculators really inspiring in the sense that, well, it could be overwhelming. You think, oh my goodness, $700, where am I going to find that? Where am I going to get that from? And again, it depends on where you are in your life cycle. Obviously, if you're a student, I get it. Don't freak out. It's that saving little, saving often. Do as much as you can. If you're working, then go back to that kind of bare bones budget, maybe to find out, can I get a cash flow coming through that way? It's about taking a bit of discipline as well. How bad do you want it? How fast do you want it? I'm all about balance too. I do believe that you do need to enjoy your life, but also understand that you do need to goal plan, as Andrew said, because you're not going to get anywhere if you don't have these goals to reach it.
I want to add to that,
yeah.
if you don't mind. Gamify it, you know, like it's a real skill to lock in the student budget. Now, it's really hard. I totally get it, right? Because we all love our creature comforts. And as we get used to what typically happens is the lifestyle creep keeps kind of going up. As our incomes increase, our lifestyle costs increase as well. So what I suggest you do is if you can lock in your current lifestyle or go back in the past and think about how many times you ate mee goreng per week to save yourself a few extra dollars, right? If you can lock that in for the next 2 or 3 or 5 years, what I always tell people is what you do in the next 5 years will determine how comfortable you are in the next 10, right? So if you can work out how to gamify it and make it fun and sustainable for yourself, it's amazing how much you can save. Yep.
Yeah. And the last one, is I'm mindful of time, where Andrew and I would love to get to some of these questions, is I did have on the 5th point for your checklist, your money checklist, is check your super. Where is it sitting? We know ASFA's come out and, you know, there are lots of different benchmarks. No one's, you know, completely right. It's an individual situation. And this is where, again, some expert advice to help you. What is that goal that you're looking for? How much capital do you need? But basically, the ASFA standard says for a couple, a comfortable retirement is $63,000 per year. So what you're looking at there, off the top of my head, I think it's about 545,000 for capital as a single. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, around 600 odd for a couple to be reaching that. Get onto ASFA's website for that. But I did go on to what they call a super detective calculator. I do talk about this a lot because I love it because of its simplicity. All you do is type in the year you were born and it says how much super you should have to reach that comfortable retirement. I would suspect a lot of you today should have been on par with that because SG compulsory contributions were in since you've started working, if you are working. So you should be on track, I'm hoping. If not, then I'll take a look at my super fund and just see, is it performing? Because maybe your fees are dragging you behind or your actual performance. So here I just asked Canstar to get their top 10 super funds based on 5-year returns. And I did want to include, just have a sneak peek what happened in that last year, because it's been a stellar of a year considering what's been happening with the markets. Do not probably expect returns like that all the time, guys.
Do not project out with those numbers, please. You'll be billionaires in no time.
Exactly. So don't expect that. But I guess why I wanted to show you that is your super statement should have arrived by now, guys, if you've got super, if you are working, of course, and that should be your returns that you're benching yourself if you are in a balanced fund. And of course, you know, the government has launched its My Super tool as well. One thing I didn't want to touch on, going back to your budget, it's really important if you do one thing, do that, look at that, because I'll ask you this. During the pandemic, what did you add onto your budget? What did you take away? And what can you do better? I know, for example, 42 million Aussies now subscribe to subscription services. How many stands do you have? Netflix, KO, God knows, Optus. Well, I mean, how many of those have you got? How many Spotify? How many music, download streaming, video streamings? They're small amounts, but they all add up. And so that's why it's so important that you do take time to look at, where is my money going? And I think I might just wrap it up on that, because I'm mindful that we have a few questions to get through.
Thank you, Sophie. That was amazing.
Thank you so much, Andrew and Effie, for that. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Andrew, as well, for going along and answering some of the Q&As. If anyone's looking for the Q&As that have been asked in this session, there's a little Q&A box on the bottom right of your screen, and you can open that and then click on the answered tab, and you'll see that there's 4 questions there that Andrew has kindly asked. So we've also had a large number of questions submitted in advance. So we'll start with one of those, and then if anyone has any more questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box and we can answer them as well.
Can I just jump into, I did see that Brisbane one, and I know Andrew's answered it, so that's great. Can I just add, I've done a bit of research on that with Canstar. So there's a Rising Star report that we've just put out. So what was your answer? First, I'll buy when I'm ready rather than the market. Yeah, I mean, clearly, yeah, rather timing the market. It may be worthwhile if you want to, that's on the Canstar website, downloading that. But Brisbane market obviously will take a turnaround because of the Olympics. When you have a look at what happened to the Sydney market as well, it tends to be factored in well before the Olympics happen. Obviously, a lot of those suburbs that are around the Olympic village, like Annerley, you would expect to do well, because a lot of infrastructure is being pumping into that area. Then investment properties as well may be viable, but do your research and do have a look at some at that report, because we do list the 10 suburbs that against 5 key metrics that can do well. And just Annerley, Caboolture, Carindale, Cleveland, Eagleby, East Ipswich, Paddington, Sandgate, worked with hotspotting on that. So it's worth having a look at some of that research as a starting ground, because the best thing you do when you buy property is research, 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 as well as location, location, location.
Fantastic. Thanks for adding that, Effie. All right, so the first question that we've got here is, and we've had quite a few people ask this question actually, is who can I get personal advice from for tax and financial advice? Are financial planners worth the cost?
I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can ask a financial advisor that.
But look, you can get help from your accountant about tax advice, right? Financial advisors can provide you with tax information and tax advice, but they can't lodge your tax returns for you. Ultimately, when you're going with professionals, you need to do a cost-benefit analysis, right? They need to be able to add value, right? Because there will come a point in your life where you'll have a ton of time, but not that much capital. I would suggest you kind of use your time to get educated so that you don't have to delegate out to professionals to do the work for you, right? Then there will come a time where we've got so much capital, but not enough time to do the research, right? Then you can start delegating out, right? So finding the sweet spot in between is where really the good financial advisors and the not so good financial advisors come into the fray, right? So you have to, what I suggest you do if you are looking for help is speak to at least three accountants, at least three financial advisors. Talk to people who you can relate with, who can educate you, to make sure that you understand, because you ultimately want to pass. There's this thing called the sleep test that I always talk about, right? If you're losing sleep at night over the strategies that you're putting forward, that you're putting in place, guess what? You're going a little bit too far, a bit too risky, right? So you need to bring it back so that you're at slight discomfort, right? That's the aim. If you can get to slight discomfort with your budgeting, slight discomfort to your investing, you know you're getting better and you're growing, right? Yeah, my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would just add on there that it's one of the most asked questions I get. Who can you trust? How do you choose a financial advisor? I mean, for me, obviously, conflict of interest, you want to get a financial advisor that's completely independent. That's, they're not owned by a bank, they're not getting a commission. And that's something that you'd ask right up front, and financial advisors would make that very clear what alliances they have. You do need help. You get to some parts of your situation where you just can't know it all. And a tax expert is definitely one person that you want in your kind of toolkit of friends, a good financial advisor that you should check in with. You don't always have to see a financial advisor for certain things as well, though. Do understand you can, if you're looking to invest $5,000 or something like that, maybe it is a case that you can get onto one of the robo-advisors as well and see what help that may be there if you want to go directly into it. But look, everyone should have a group of experts that they can rely on to help them achieve their financial goals.
Thank you very much, Effie and Andrew, for that answer. The next question we've got is, what are the pros and cons of setting joint financial goals with a partner?
It's a very, very good question. Okay, so in my case, the goal's the most important thing. When you enter into a relationship, you really do need to understand what are you both striving for, because your money personalities can be very different. And that's bound to happen. And that's okay, so long as you understand each other's money personalities and set in the goals. How you split your money, how you do that, well, you can change and slice and dice that any which way you want. In my personal situation, I don't know what my husband earns and he doesn't know what I earn. We keep our finances separate, but our goals together. He's a lover of properties. I'm a lover of shares and super. So we've diversified our assets. And I think I always say, God help us if we split up, because we'll have very kind of narrow portfolios, won't we? But it's really important as a couple that you do share those goals. Yeah.
100%. You have to get on the same page. And as Effie alluded to, you have different financial stories, right? And this is where bringing in professionals, if you want to bring it all together, right? Because with bringing it together, it creates synergy, right? So keeping it apart will you have to kind of build your own kind of portfolio, right? So by bringing it together, it creates more momentum, but more challenges too, right? So the key is to bring it together as I guess seamlessly as possible. Right? Now, if you are starting a relationship and if you already got your finances sorted, what I always suggest you do is you get a binding financial agreement, which is pretty much like a prenup, right? Some of you may have seen American movies, right? So what you need to do is get a binding financial agreement so you know where you guys starting off at. So that if something were to happen in the future, you are both going to be protected. You both agree upon it, right? If you can't agree upon it, then you can bring a counselor in, or you can talk to an advisor, or you can talk to an accountant and get them to be the bad guy, right? Because if you're trying to bring in a binding financial agreement and your partner's not really keen on talking about it, well, if you bring in your advisor or your accountant or your lawyer friend or whatever it may be and make them the bad person, right? You can sort of shield away, use them as a shield to get the result over the line, because you ultimately want to protect yourself and your family as well, right? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to be aware of when you're mixing in finances.
And also, Andrew, I mean, people are getting into relationships later or coming with, other
Children.
family commitments or kids and so on. And it's really important that you do understand what are they bringing into the relationship, whether it's good debt, bad debt, because at the end of the day, you can still keep your finances separate. But if they've got a $50,000 bad debt and they're channeling their money to repay that, what is the contribution happening to the household then? Probably not much from that person, and you're going to put in. If you're okay with that, that's fine, but these have got to be discussed, because if their cash flow is really trying to filter and pay off bad debts while you've got no bad debts, you then need to talk about how you're going to juggle that. And look, we are getting into relationships, and we're getting into different relationships, and it's not as clean cut.
Fantastic. Well, that's probably all we have time for, noting that it's 6:59. So
that went very fast.
Yeah.
It did go very fast. So I just wanted to thank everyone for submitting your questions, and also obviously thank Effie and Andrew for being on the panel tonight. If you want to check out Effie's new book, it's called Ditch the Debt and Get Rich. Or you can also follow Effie there at Effie Zahos. And if you want to follow, thanks Nina, there, her handle at the bottom. And if you want to stay up to date with all of Andrew's advice, you can check out his online webinar there, and there's also a QR code there as well. Before we close out, Effie and Andrew, did you have any final words? Otherwise, we can close it out there.
Look, I just want to thank everyone for coming along to these things. We've been running it in the middle of the week, and we've been getting a ton of you guys watching these videos, and for the replayers, for people who are watching this replay as well. We really appreciate the fact that you're trying to increase your financial literacy and reach the next level. And we're here to serve, and we're really appreciative of University of Queensland and the Young Alumni Advisory Board for organising this thing and making it accessible to the wider UQ audience.
Yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed the seminars and chatting to everyone, and I always get excited talking about money, and I hope you do. I hope you can take a few things out of tonight's webinar. At the very least, and I said it and I keep saying it, the very least, just have a quick look and just see where is my money going, and take on some of those tips that Andrew was saying as far as getting your kind of top level strategies. So I wish everyone the best in 2022. It has to be a better year than what we've had this year, and I think there'll be a lot more interesting investing opportunities coming into the new year too, especially with the interest rate cycles happening. So yeah, all the best with making the most of your money.
And please, guys, don't leave a bunch of cash in an access account getting you 0.01%. Please don't do it. Your cash is going backwards, right? Don't do it.
Thanks, Andrew and Effie, for that final advice. And yeah, that concludes our final Get Finance Fit series for the year. So we look forward to seeing everyone again next year. And as you exit the webinar, there'll just be a quick 2-minute survey to get some feedback on the event. So thank you very much, everyone. And feel free to reach out and follow Effie and Andrew on social media. Thanks, everyone.